All right. So what you're saying is, so when you see this pattern create itself and then you see it repeat itself, right?
Hmm.
You consider that being the fake out because it's basically it repeated itself, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I
Well,
wouldn't
walk me through this.
say
So,
like that. Like,
yeah.
like
Here.
so if I'm looking at that right,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm watching, okay, the market just did that. Then I'm looking at it again. Okay, it just did that again. So I'm as long as the top of the chart matches the volume at the bottom, then I'm like, okay, this is normal people just bopping in and out, like just
Mm-hmm.
giving and taking. That's what they do all day. So um, like just basically it's like staying with the crowd. Like I don't know. I call it like staying with the crowd.
Yeah. 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 That's fine.
If the crowd starts to thin out, then it's like boom, you better pay attention, dude. So like it's time to do something. So I don't know. I never did the whole shorting thing. Um, where this had I known how to do shorting, definitely would have helped because it's the same thing. Like it goes forward and then it takes. It market gives and then it takes, and it's a nonstop thing, and it's like a 3 day cycle. I find if so my sleep schedule is like opposite of everybody. So when I'm like in peak, like you guys are probably just in REM sleep, like the Chinese market opens up,
Yeah.
and on Sundays, whenever that opens up, if it opens up shitty, then the day's going to like you can already tell the way the day's going to go, and then for whatever reason, if Wednesdays are good. But they're usually shitty. Usually Wednesdays are shitty days. If Monday's a good day, so it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like every 3 days I feel like the market.
Right.
Um,
So you're playing the
do you know
the
what?
the sentiment of the market as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me
Mm-hmm.
now, if we repeat this, we can see that this kind of like created, like what you're saying is it just kept repeating the pattern. Now here,
Mm-hmm.
this is where I want to ask you here because this
Mm-hmm.
section here is where we actually got to where we created um, what most people would be considered a breakout, right? A higher high, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on that type of move there, what does that signal to you?
Okay. So as soon as it broke that horizontal line, then that's when I'm going to be looking at the trade and see how much volume are people still in there, even when it breaks that line.
And okay, so for volume, you're using that
Mm-hmm.
volume indicator on the bottom, the regular one, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That look like
Buildings.
the New York skyline.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. And what time frame do you use when you're in there?
So when I always start with the same lines that you have at 4 hours, 1 hour, and then I'll go to 30 minutes. And then based upon how I feel, like if you could print each one of those and look at them next to each other, I feel like I have a sense of like what the market is doing emotionally. Like where are people at? Like the, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know how to.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So you're looking at the sentiment.
I guess that's what I mean. I'm having a hard time articulating,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
it's
So you're just picking up the sentiment side of like, okay, people are slowly buying into this. Now, the only indicator you've been using for that is basically the volume indicator.
the volume and when the RSI and the MACD when they make the golden cross. So I'd want to watch the coin from I would do
And when you say
so one day.
RSI, are you using the regular RSI like this one, or like stochastic, or
Yeah, like I would set the long one would be like the 200-day moving average
okay?
was when I really wanted to screw like we'll say pan out to look what the coin is really doing is on the 200, and then from there I would go back. I would do 7, 14, 30 day, and from there I would start as wide as possible and then narrow down and then get into the whatchamacallit, the time frame. And the other part that I'm leaving out is every morning, this was my process. I'd wake up and watch all my like YouTubers, like religiously. I had certain people I followed every single morning while I had coffee. I had my phone in the shower with me, listening to my people while I'm getting ready, while I drove to work. I'm listening to, like, that's it. That's all I did in my free time, was just watch videos and followed people that they seemed like they knew what they were talking about. Like whatever they were talking about, if it worked, then I was like, great. Like then I was like, yeah, this dude, he knows what he's talking about. And still just trying to learn like the cup and handle, the head and shoulders, the double top. Like it was. It's like you say, I didn't stick with one thing. It was just being new. Like you just like I was like, oh, I just want to make all this money overnight, blah blah blah. Because when I first got into it, I was like, wow, this is insane. Like how much money. This was back in I think 2016.
Right.
Yeah, 2000, either 15 or 16 is when I got into it. It was when Bitcoin was 10 grand, and there was like all this FUD about China was going to ban it, blah blah blah. And the one dude that I had been watching was like, it's going to retrace, it's going to go back to 3,300. And I was like, this is going to be it. I was like, if this guy, if he calls this shit, that's my guy. And he did. And I was like, went to my girlfriend and was like, look, here's the deal. I was like, I'm going to get 3 coins, 10 grand, blah, blah. She was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? She goes, you have no idea what you're doing. She's like, just use that money for something. I'm like, no, you don't understand. She goes, what if it goes to 0? I'm like, oh, like, I can't explain it. I was like, let me. And she was like, no, absolutely not. So every day I followed, and I would like send her what my portfolio would have been. And I jumped in. And then it got to the point where she was just like, okay, enough with this shit. I feel like you're trying to slap me in the face for holding you back from doing it. So eventually I just said, fuck it. And yeah, I got in. So.
That's perfect.
But dude, we would be at the grocery store, right? She's going up and down the aisles. I'm just sitting there doing stupid trades in and out of the market. I just paid for groceries. Like that's how insane it was. And I was trading Bitcoin, which was like freaking expensive as. But I mean, it would just run up. You wouldn't have to leverage or anything. It would be up a couple $100, just like nonstop. You could just pop in and out of the market and just make little chunks of money, little chunks of money. Like it was great.
All right. So let me grab. Hold on one second.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we got the moving day average in here. All right. So the 50 is the yellow. The 200 is going to be the red. All right. So on this breakout here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you see where this orange is, that's where it kind of broke above the horizontal line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now what most people would do here, a standard way of trading this would be, that would be considered the breakout, okay? What would happen there is most people would then put a buy on the retesting of the support, or that now it's the resistance that became the support, okay? So is that also like a common way that you were kind of like setting up the trading on that side? That's what you were waiting for, and then at that point, you would then say, okay, I'm now on this, vertical, kind of like sideways move.
You're like way too sophisticated. This was me, like all of this went into it in the morning, like hearing about what was like I was putting into what was flooding, what was the FOMO, what was everybody like hyping about, and then I'd go look at the charts, and I was like putting all that together, thinking I was like the mentalist or something.
Yeah, no, but this is like, that's what people do, right?
The problem was I started doing good with it. So then, like, I was like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. You guys should get in too. And then people are looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, oh, you're gonna lose all your money.
Yeah,
I almost did,
it happens.
But not because of trading. Like, I got locked out of my Coinbase account
Yeah.
and this was right when Bitcoin hit like 20 grand, and my account got locked out for 90 days, waiting for them to, expedite it. You can't talk to anybody. Well, while all that was going on, I broke my phone, no indicators, and like a dumbass, some dude's like, "Oh yes, Rajneesh, how may I help you?" I'm like, "Oh, woo, this
Oh
dude's
yeah,
gonna
you had
help me,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah."
Yeah, you got that scammer
Dude,
guy on there. Well, here,
fuck,
look.
man, I did everything you're not supposed to do. Like I was so happy. I'm standing in front of Giant with my laptop on the little concrete thing for the handicapped people
Yeah, you
or
thought you
whatever,
got
so I
back
could be
in.
on the Wi-Fi. I'm so excited. I'm like, "Woo, dude! Oh yes, I'm back." And next thing you know, he was like, "Okay." And at the time, I didn't get it, because I was just so excited. I was like, "Wow, I can't believe that." I was like bragging to everybody at the barbershop. I was like, "Dude, this guy was awesome." Blah blah blah. And next thing you know, like in hindsight, I was like, he asked me about my Binance account. He asked me about Coin Mama. He asked me about like I was like, well, how the fuck does he know? And I was like, oh shit. I was like, this dude's not with fucking Coinbase. He's like, I let this dude in, but it was crazy because their site, like you typed in Google, it looked just like Coinbase. Like they answered the phone just like Coinbase. Like it
Yeah,
was insane. Like
that's
just
what they do.
crazy.
They
And
set
then
it up.
Coinbase couldn't do anything. They're like, oh, well, your account's locked. I'm like, yeah, well, this dude, I literally, like a dumbass, just gave him a picture of me holding my ID. Like, I let him in my computer. Like, I did everything you were not supposed to do. And I was like, can I change my email address at least? And they're like, no, we can put a note here on your file. And she's like, the good news is your account's locked, so nobody can get in it.
Right.
It's like,
Nobody can get in
scumbag.
anyways. So
Yeah.
basically on this, like, so you had a strategy that most people at the end of the day kind of like build, which isn't bad. It's, follow the news, follow the trends, see what's trending, trade with the masses. It's not bad to trade with, big influencers that are pushing a coin or an agenda. There's a lot of things that kind of like go in there. So what we're gonna do here is kind of like take the process that you kind of like have, and then kind of like put it where a little less steps where we don't have to really look at too much of the all the news and all that stuff, and just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like use indicators and use the basics to see if we can recognize movements, right. And most of this is kind of like it's the basic side of it, right. So for instance, let's take a look at like Solana, right? So a lot of times, there's what we call trading zones, right? And trading zones are normally like the bigger the time frame, the bigger the data, right? The more data, the more
Mm-hmm.
we know what's happening at that time, right? So let me see here. So let's break this down. I'm gonna go over some of the basics. So a lot of times, what you want to do here is these right here, the where you have the parallels and the moving. They're good to have these in here there to where you can. This will help you to at least set yourself up to where when you see tops and bottoms of these consolidation moves, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
we call them clusters, but they're just where the coin goes sideways, right? Top and bottom, right? And if you go to, smaller time frames like the hour or even the 10 minute,
Yeah.
you can really like see all that data kind of like sitting in there for you, and um, and what comes in and out. So a lot of times, and these are just on the bigger side, right? So these are the 4 hours, and now when we're on a 10 minute, the micro side of it, we can see where it's kind of like just traveling inside of there, right? So the bigger time frames are great because they can give you an idea as far as like, you know, picking out bigger moves. So some of these are just basic things here. So let me um, see what we can find here. So so this right here, let's just use kind of what we're doing right now, right? So a lot of it would be um, one of the things that we do is basically use just a stochastic RSI, right? The stochastic is just going to give you an ideal of like when something's, uh, kind of what you're saying, like trading with the masses, right? It's the sentiment of the trade, right? Now we normally don't trade against the 1 hour, so it'll be where, like for instance, right here. So as we go to Solana right here, where we are currently, Solana's 1 hour. It's probably at the top, heading down. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Now the 1 hour. See how the 1 hour is. So how a stochastic works is there's a zero line at the bottom, right, and that's the floor. And I'll draw that line, and then normally it goes up to 100, right? When it hits that 100, that's normally the top, right? Now if you get to a situation where it's not reaching that top or coming down, then that's kind of the opposite. Now, kind of the rule of thumb here is like, find trades that have momentum, kind of like what you're doing, trading with the masses, et cetera, et cetera. So here we would just set up some guidelines here to where um, we can follow some steps, right? So one thing we like to do is we normally do the 4 hour time frame, and on the 4 hour, this is where we find the beginnings of where the market is trending, right? So if you look at your boxes here, and we go down to the 4 hour, right? You can see here is when you have the 4 hour make its move up, that is normally when you're going to see a bounce in the market that you're seeing, right? And how indicators, they call it lag because whatever time frame you're on, it doesn't print until that time frame happens, right? So basically, when you're looking at the 4 hour, you're not going to see the 4 hour, particularly right here. It's on the bottom. It doesn't move to the upside until, so it hits the bottom here at 1800 hours. Here's 2200, 20, So here we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 hours, 24 hours. So it was an entire day that it was on the floor. And then all of a sudden, it pops up, right? So if we put a line here, we'll put a white line. That is basically telling us that the volume or the sentiment or the people, whatever you want to call them, are now starting to consider this to be a bounce or an upward move, right? So that's that one section there. You can see like in that white box where we have that moment, you can see where that begins the upward move for this coin, right? And normally when this gets to the top side of it, we like to kind of like look at that like, okay, it's now it's hit the top. We consider that kind of being exhausted, and that's where we would look at it and say, okay, that's pretty much where we're going to look for the volume to be at its least scenario, and that's because the volume is pretty much it's overbought, right? And then so these type of scenarios here give you what we call trading boxes, right? And those trading boxes would look like this. So if we took this and said, okay, this is our 4 hour trading box, right? Meaning that when that 4 hour broke up, we would create a box, and then when it gets 4 hours into being up top, right, or it starts to head down, which would be somewhere over here, and we'll make this yellow. That would be, you can see here on the RSI, it breaks down right about here. You can see it breaking down. So that would be this arrow here, which means this box would be right here. So this box here would be what we would consider a trading zone, right, or a long position area, right? And that's simply based off of the stochastic RSI breaking up from the bottom and then breaking down from the top, right? So you see how that creates this yellow box here?
Yeah, I see you.
Yeah. So that's just a trading zone, right? Very simple, very easy, right? So let me give it a second here. So this is the 4 hour trading zone. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this down, make this a 10, hit OK. Settings, move this to inside, center, bottom. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to take the video here real quick. And what I want to do is, this is kind of like a real basic lesson. Give me 1 second. I'm going to make this smaller. I'm going to reset this video because